Imagine receiving a letter that changes the entire course of your life. Not a love letter, not a letter from a long-lost family member, but a letter written in faded brown ink, sealed with black wax, and addressed to you by a man who, by all accounts, had been dead for 3 days when he wrote it. That is exactly what happened to Thomas Hale. And by the time he understood what the letter truly meant, he was already too deep inside Ashford Hall to find his way back out. The year was 1743. Thomas Hale was 26, a junior clerk in Bath, precise, ink-stained, and entirely too confident for someone who had experienced so little of the world. That October morning, his employer slid a letter across the desk and changed everything. The road to Dunmore grew less welcoming with every mile. By late afternoon, the sky had turned pewter gray, and the trees pressed close on both sides. When Ashford Hall appeared on the ridge above the village, even the coachman exhaled. Ashford Hall was enormous and nearly black with damp. Ivy had swallowed the east wing entirely. 3 upper windows were boarded shut. The iron gates stood open, not welcoming, more like a mouth that had simply forgotten how to close. The village of Dunmore huddled at the foot of the ridge, as if hoping the house wouldn't notice it. In the tavern, only one man met Thomas's gaze. "You'll want to speak to Father Morrow before nightfall," the boy said quietly. "He knows things." Thomas didn't listen. He would regret that. The housekeeper met him at the door. Iron gray hair, cold slate eyes, 31 years of service pressed into every line of her face. "Mr. Hale," she said. Not a welcome, a statement of fact. "I know why you've come," she said, and stepped aside. The entrance hall soared 3 stories above, a black and white marble floor, along the walls, generations of Ashford portraits all wearing the same expression, watchful, impatient, as if they had been waiting a very long time for something to happen. She led him down a corridor of closed doors. The floorboards bowed beneath his feet, as if something below had shifted over the years. Thomas had the sudden feeling of being a very small figure in a very large story, one that had started long before his arrival. His room was small and quiet. One window looked out over the moors, gray and still, like a sea that had forgotten how to move. Somewhere deep in the house, something creaked, rhythmically, like a pendulum. He told himself it was the house. He almost believed it. Around midnight, he heard footsteps inside the wall. Then he looked out the window. On the far edge of the grounds, a figure stood, unnaturally tall. No face, no hands, just a column of shadow in a landscape of silver and gray. Then the cloud passed, and it was gone. She was not what he expected. Miss Clara Ashford sat at the far end of an enormous candle-lit table, dark hair worn loose, face all angles and intensity. She watched him walk the full length of the room, with an expression he couldn't read. "My father kept me in the dark, Mr. Hale, the way you keep something fragile in the dark, or the way you keep something dangerous. I was never sure which I was." She picked up her spoon. The conversation for the moment was closed. When dinner was finished, Clara held out her hand. In her palm, an iron key, old and heavy, its handle cast in the shape of a stag, with one broken antler. "Tomorrow, 9 o'clock, she said. Thomas took it. It was heavier than it should have been. The study door was solid oak, blackened with age, set slightly crooked in the wall. The lock was thick with disuse. Thomas turned the key. It moved with a resistance. That felt less mechanical than reluctant, as if the door itself had preferences. Then the room exhaled. Inside, floor-to-ceiling books, a desk buried, under mountains of paper, a cold fireplace, a tarnished brass orrery. The leather chair behind the desk was empty, but the impression in it was profound. Lord Ashford had sat there so long, His shape had become permanent. The letter was hidden inside a ledger, addressed to Thomas Hale specifically, dated 4 days before the Lord's official death. "What I have found beneath this house must be witnessed. Behind the orrery you will find a door. Go through it, I am sorry." "Did you know about this?" Thomas asked. "No," said Clara, "but I knew there was something." Behind the orrery, shifted with effort by both of them, was a door, low, narrow, no lock, just an iron handle worn bright, where hands had touched it for years. Clara opened it. The stairs led down into complete darkness. Thomas held the lantern ahead, a small amber circle, the only light in the world. The walls were stone, damp and close. The air grew colder with every step. 30 steps. Then, something below. A low vaulted cellar, shelves covering every wall. Bottles, boxes, bundled documents. In the center, a large table covered in papers, connected by threads of red string. A diagram painted on the far wall in black. And in the corner, a chair. It was occupied. The man in the chair was very thin, very old, wrapped in a dark cloak, hands folded, eyes closed. Thomas's mind refused to process what his eyes were telling him, because the man appeared to be breathing. Clara knelt before him, reached out, touched his hand. The man opened his eyes, pale blue, utterly lucid, the same pale blue as Clara's. "Clara," said Lord Edmund Ashford, "you found the letter." He was alive. Lord Ashford had staged his own death. For 2 years he had hidden in this cellar, compiling evidence of a crime, a fraud committed 30 years ago, that stole land from hundreds of families, and silenced those who discovered it. He had been a coward. Now at the end, he was trying to fix it. Clara stood over the table of red threads and names, 30 years of guilt mapped out in ink and string. "2 men were removed," she said quietly. "What does that mean?" Her father looked at her for a long time. "It means I knew, and I said nothing. That is my pa-RT of it." Thomas spent 4 hours copying every document. By candlelight, 2 complete sets, his fingers cramped. His candles burned down twice. He did not stop. Nearby, Clara and Mrs. Greywick spoke, in low, tense voices about 30 years of silence, and who it had really protected. At 2:30, they slipped out through the kitchen garden, cold, still, stars everywhere. Clara led from memory, pulling Thomas, through the dark by his sleeve. Once she stopped him. Something moved in the trees, large, unhurried, aware of them. "Fox," Clara said. Thomas didn't ask if she believed it. The figure was gone from the garden wall. Thomas realized immediately that was worse than if it had still been standing there. They moved quickly toward the village, toward the one man who had tried to warn them. From the beginning, the church was dark except for one window, a single amber point of light in the vestry, the only warmth in the entire landscape. Clara knocked 3 times. After a moment, the door opened. Father Morrow was awake, as if he had been expecting this visit for some time. He poured brandy, sat down. "Your father confessed to me 2 months ago. There is a barrister in Taunton, Aldous Crane. What you're carrying will give him everything he needs. Take my horse, go now." Crane read for an hour and a half without speaking. Then he sent 4 letters. To London, to the sheriff, to a justice, to a journalist. "You've just handed me the most important case of my career," he said. "Who sent you?" "A country priest," Thomas said, "who knew more than anyone gave him credit for." The proceedings took 2 years. One family was convicted, another settled quietly. It was not perfect justice, but it was something. Lord Edmund Ashford died in his cellar on the 11th of November, 1743. A single candle burned on the table beside his work. The doctor noted he looked like a man who had finished something he had started. Of Ashford Hall at dusk, then never again. Clara sold the hall in 1745 and moved to Bath. 24 years old, a modest inheritance, 30 years of secrets to put behind her. She put them behind her imperfectly, the way everyone does, and went on living. Every sealed door, every silence, these things need our cooperation to survive. Lord Ashford spent 30 years walking past, then he stopped. He turned around, he lit a candle, and a young man with ink-stained hands carried it out into the world. Subscribe. There are more doors to open,